So today's topic is 50 Shades of Gray. As you notice, I'm wearing 50 shades of gray. Gray pants, shoes, socks, jacket, hair. And I looked in the mirror and I thought, well, I'm wearing all gray. And then I thought, my brain said 50 Shades of Gray, which is a nasty movie, evidently. I've never seen that movie. That's a nasty movie. And then my wife's voice says, I don't want that in my head. Because whenever there's nastiness on TV, she's like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want that in my head. Where your eyes look, so shall you go. And when you're driving a car, you look where you want to go and your hands will take you there. And it's a metaphor for life. Where you look is where you will go. And if you're looking at all this nastiness, that's where you're going to go. So 50 Shades of Gray. I thought about that. And it was kind of in my head. Not that I want to see this movie, but I thought to myself, why is it there's a naughtiness in so many people that want to see these naughty things, if you know what I'm saying? And I thought, because we live within that 50 Shades of Gray. The gray zone. Well, it's not that bad. That gray area where you kind of make an excuse and say, well, it's not pornography, it's only hard R. This movie, 50 Shades of Gray. But all of these little temptations of life are in that gray zone. And there's a lot more than 50 shades of gray. There's hundreds and thousands of shades of gray. Let's just, for example, say, is being angry a shade of gray? Yeah, maybe so, because anger leads to resentment, leads to something else. Being lustful, shades of gray. Being resentful, being in your emotions, like those emotions are all those kind of shades of gray, where you should be a centered person. You can see and feel these emotions, but they don't rule over you. And if you live within those 50 shades of gray, those are all the excuses of life why you aren't the person that you should be in the eyes of your Father in heaven. So I thought about it. I thought, in my life lately, I've been very, very transparent. And I thought, why am I being so transparent? Why am I letting all these people in this world into my life, into my head, into where my inward journey? Why? And I thought, well, I'm tired of putting on a show. I'm tired of being the actor on a stage. Even though I enjoy being an actor on a stage, I have made a good living being an actor on a stage, you might say, with the radio show that I did for the last almost 30 years. The radio shows, number of different shows, and being on television. All the stage of life, but actually the stage. Being paid to be an actor on a stage. But I'm tired of that. I don't want to be that actor on a stage, but aren't we all? Shakespeare. The whole world is a stage, right? Aren't we all? I at least get paid for it. So I look at this and I go, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to get paid to do it so much anymore. So who am I really? Who are we really when we're not the actor on a stage? When you're all by yourself in the silence of your own mind? Who are you talking with and who are you communicating with and who's communicating with you? Are you within that 50 shades of gray of your unconsciousness? Because the consciousness, the truth, is the light and it will set you free. The unconscious state that we exist in is those 50 shades of gray. All the emotions, the feel good, the warm and fuzzy, the foods, the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, all those 50 shades of gray. We live our lives in there. That's the hypnotic states of Americans and the hypnotic states of the world. We live within those shades of gray. The acceptable, the reason why I call it shades of gray, it's all kind of acceptable. Well, that's a gray area. I'm just not sure about it. But it's not a bad place to go. It's just gray. It's just unsure. Where you go when the doors are closed and the lights are off inside your own head. The shades of gray inside your mind. Will you allow yourself to watch this or watch that or watch the movie 50 Shades of Grey? I don't want to watch it, but I know there's a little naughty side of me, the alien on board, that does want to watch it, that does want my eyes to see it. My eyes to see it. Not its eyes, my eyes, because where I look is where I will go. Just like when you're driving a car, I talked about the driving schools. And when you're driving really fast, you don't look at the wall. Otherwise, you're going to drive right into the wall. The wall's right next to you, and you know it's there, but you look where you want to go, which is not into the wall. You look where you want to go, and your eyes will take you there. That little alien on board, the demon, knows that if it can get you to watch these nasty things, so will you go. So will you go. As a man thinketh, so shall he be. So if he can get your eyes to watch or your ears to listen and use you in some way by making it a 50 Shades of Grey situation, well, it's not that bad. I used to say this to my wife all the time. It's not that big of a deal. I'd say it to my dad. Dad, I'm not that bad. Oh, look, compared to all my friends, I'm way better. He says, never compare yourself to your friends. Compare yourself to Jesus Christ. Now, how do you feel? And I was like, oh, boy. But even with my wife, I would say, it's not that big of a deal. Yes, it is. I don't want to watch this or that or whatever. Because you go to a movie, and there's all this nakedness and sex and stuff, and my wife, she'd put her hands over my eyes. I'm like, quit it, knock it off. I paid to see this, for goodness sake. And even one time, she jumped up in front of the television with a blanket. You're not watching that. And we laughed. I thought it was so funny. I took a picture of her, and we have like a 75-inch TV. She had her arms spread out like, the wings with the blanket. You're not watching that. And she's trying to turn the chair. She's protecting me, right? Which is true. We're on a journey together. We're on a journey together, her and I, and all of us on a journey together. So we should not live in a monastery up on a mountaintop by ourselves. It's a whole lot easier. No TV, no electricity. Okay, give us electricity, lights, running water. But to live on a mountaintop is pretty darn easy. You're only responsible for yourself. No distractions. Now you got to go out into the world because that's where the test is. That is where the test is. Interacting with all you folks, us interacting with each other, us getting angry with each other, seeing our anger, somebody pointing out, hey, you're angry. Oh, shut up. Dealing with all these things, right? This is what is the important journey, is to interact with each other, not get angry when somebody says something that you disagree with. That's the shades of gray. That's the righteousness, the righteous pride. Oh, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about anyway. How you deal with it, if you know what I'm saying. People are probably thinking that about me right now, listening to this around the world. Who the hell are you? How do you know? I have a friend, I don't know, I guess he's a life coach, and he bought a new Lamborghini, and he put a picture of his Lamborghini, and somebody commented, why do you keep showing off? Why do you keep showing off with all your fancy things and all your money and all your wealth? And it was like, he says, where's your humility? My friend posted this nasty comment from somebody. He says, I like what you say, but I don't like how you show off all the time. And I thought he gave the funniest response. And I don't entirely agree with it, but I kind of don't entirely not agree with it. He says, in this environment, you have chosen to follow me. This is social media. He says, I didn't force you to follow me. You clicked to choose to follow me. This is my life. I'm talking about my life. I'm showing you that I'm winning. I'm showing you my successes. And my friends that are happy for me cheer me on. Good for you. You're doing good. And he says, and those of you who don't appreciate the fact that I'm being successful, tell me, where's your humility? And so he goes on and he tells this big old story about, it's good for him to show off his success, so on and so forth, which I don't entirely agree. But it's so funny. There are people in this world that all they want to do is tear everybody else down. All they want to do is tear people down. Look at you, look at him, look at her, look at this, look at that. But they're never looking at themselves. Where does it say in the Bible, remove the beam from your eye before you remove the splinter from mine? We're also busy looking at each other, judging each other. Oh, look at his shoes, look at his jacket, look at his beard, look at his hair, look at his glasses. I'm just looking around at all you guys. Look at the funny hat that Al's wearing. But you know what I'm saying? We can't help it. Our eyes are the window to our judgments, that show the judgments, and then it feeds into a dark side, a shade of gray. Isn't it hard to just look at somebody and not make some little voice that comes up and says, Look at him or her, or look at that hairdo or whatever. There's always something. The question is, can we look at another human being without anything happening?
That's why we need new eyes.
Well, that is the objective state that hopefully we're gaining, right? It's the meditative, the silent prayer where you're not assuming things. You're not, even if your mind says it, well, so what? You just let it pass. It's like, it's garbage anyway.
So that's a good point. Your mind is going to say all kinds of things. Your mind is going to offer all kinds of ugliness. Sometimes it'll be lust. Oh, look at her, look at him. I noticed that sometimes being a man, it is not unusual for them to use sex sells, to use, commercials and billboards. And when a man sees them using a handsome man, like what is that, Thunder Down Under in Las Vegas with all the handsome guys with their six-pack and their shirts off, to me, it's kind of repulsive. I look at it and go, okay, got a nice physique, whatever, but gross. So when some woman posts on social media a picture of a man in a swimsuit that's got a six-pack and handsome and says, this is what my weekend's going to be like, or something like that. And I think to myself, how bizarre is that? It's out of character. But technically, it's out of character for all of us. But since in a man's world, it's normal for men to look upon women with this strange thing, but it shouldn't be normal for us either. It's just that since I'm seeing it from a different point of view, I feel strange about it when I see women doing it, because it's like women aren't supposed to be lust monsters like men are.
That's maturity. I mean, when you're young and in the society of today, things have changed and gotten away from a morality that was healthy and good. And so our generations are now raised and steeped in this sexual body attraction, and especially younger people. I mean, they're going through that phase in their life. As we get older, please God, we mature out of that to a greater degree, step by step, gray by lighter gray by lighter gray by lighter gray. So that's what we have to deal with here and now, and in our society and in ourselves. I mean, we have to deal with this, environment that we're in, and become better people if we're of that path.
I will say that my view is that, the enemy, the devil, wants to keep men and women, and now even children, in a sexually stimulated state of mind, because then you can be manipulated. You can't see the truth about what's going on. It's like keeping somebody on a drug. Just keep the masses at their lowest base nature at all times, and then they aren't powerful. They aren't powerful in bringing the truth and standing for what's right in life.
Yeah, because that's the emotional field, that you're caught in all those emotional feelings, and it's hard to step back out of that and be calm and, really see what's going on.
The other day we were talking about this at the kitchen table, I remember. We were talking about how women are now, they want the rights that man had to be wrong through abortion and all this.
Yeah, I would say typically the stereotype would be women, in the past were more geared toward marriage and home and family, and it was the men that were out sleeping around and then leaving women to take care of children by themselves. But somewhere along the way, women got so angry at this that they decided, well, we're going to beat you at your own game. We're going to do the same thing. That's why abortion is like at the top of their list, because without abortion, you have consequences to pregnancy and sex. Abortion is the key for these women fighting the wrong fight, because this is where they find equality with men's ability to be promiscuous without any consequences. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sadly, the equality to be wrong.
Right.
I want the equal right to be wrong and sin and do wrong things, but I'm the only one that has the consequence, the woman says, because I get pregnant. Now I'll kill my baby. I don't care. Abortion. Men don't have to think so much about any of that because they can just run around and do whatever they want and the consequence is on someone else. What a horrible thing abortion is. What a horrible, horrible, horrible thing.
The sad thing is, I really believe women have been duped because they're fighting for they're fighting for rights, but they're fighting against their own best interest because they're not becoming better people. You know there's misery in that kind of life. You know there is. But it's the big lie. It's the big lie. And it's caused women to leave their post as protectors of the innocent.
A moment ago, Connie said the shades of gray get lighter and lighter and lighter. But this is where the shades of gray get darker and darker and darker until it's black. The sad thing is that with these rights to be wrong, and yes, we have the right to be wrong. Those are our rights. We live in such an amazing country that you have all these rights. Some of them are wrong. Isn't that funny that a right can be wrong? Your rights, some of them can be wrong. Choosing to abort a baby, kill or murder a baby in the womb is wrong. What happens, though, is we go by the world's standards. I don't want to live my life by the world's standards. I want to live my life by the standards that God has set for us. And if you live by the world's standards, well, guess what? You're going to live in those shades of gray until it turns black.
This lie has been able to proliferate because of the shade of gray of not seeing the baby in the womb. When Roe v. Wade came out, they didn't have ultrasound and things like that. So they were allowed to justify this. But I do believe that babies in the womb are going to be given their equal rights one day here in America and be protected under the Constitution. Just the way black people weren't covered for some reason that wasn't good. All they did was apply the Constitution to them. We need to apply it to the children, and I think that's going to happen.
Please God. So today we talk about the 50 Shades of Gray. And I think, I've been spending a little more time in the Bible, and every time I do, I say yes, 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 yes. I agree with it. I don't need to make the Bible better. I just need to understand life a little better to make the Bible apply in a different way than it has in the past. It used to be a great storybook. Now it's a navigation tool. I read it like a map. I don't read it like I'm reading a great story, a fairy tale. I read it like I'm reading a road map. Where is it going to take me? My father founded this organization, the Foundation of Human Understanding. We are all trying to understand this human experience that we have. We have this wonderful Bible that gives us all kinds of direction and stories and just amazing, amazing opportunity to be able to find our way in the dark, in the shades of gray, in the fog of life, which the fog is gray, isn't it? And the night is dark, but it's not completely pitch black. You can find your way. And if you have the Bible, you pretty much have a good roadmap, but we don't use it. We read it like a story, like a fairy tale, like a storybook. And I'm learning how to read it like a map. But along the way, I also realize that I have a navigation device almost like, not a compass, a gyroscope. Has everybody experienced a gyroscope? Have you ever held a gyroscope when it's doing its thing? Raise of hands. So most everybody. If you haven't, I'm going to give you an example. Have you ever put your bicycle upside down and spun the wheel? And while the wheel is turning, you try and turn the wheel or the bike. There's a miraculous force. There's a miraculous force that doesn't allow it to just do what it normally did when it was at rest. So I know that while I'm in motion in my life, if I use this spiritual gyroscope and I start to lean towards something that is not good, I will lean against a force that will want to straighten me back out. And that to me is how my life is right now. I have like a gyroscope that's keeping me on a straight and narrow path. It keeps correcting me. It's almost like an autopilot, but not. In other words, I have to still steer myself through life, but when I start getting like I'm going to go the wrong direction, something says, no, 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 and it kind of just miraculously like magnet, like when you put two magnets together, they sometimes attract and boom, they stick together. That's me and my wife. But if it's the wrong force or the wrong woman, it's like turning the magnet around and they repel each other, they push each other apart. That's what I want. I want to stick with my wife, but I want all other temptation in this world, I want to be pushed away from it. That's the blessing from God. My dad used to say to me, if you live your life the right way, you'll be in the protection and the umbrella of God. You'll be under his umbrella and he'll protect you. And I used to think to myself, okay, I want to live that way. I want to live that life. And now I'm starting to realize, I'm starting to see with that very magical force that is keeping me from going any direction. It just feels like there's a little bit of a magical force, like a magnetic field or a gyroscopic force or some sort. I'm trying my best to articulate it into words that is keeping me going straight.
And that is what is so necessary because, as we know, people can read the Bible as a map and go totally in a different direction because there's not that, as you put it, gyroscope inside that's keeping him from just, or her, from just reading the words as words and making their own interpretation. And many people do that, and it is deadly. So that gyroscope is vital. In fact, that's more important than reading the Bible as a map. You know, it's more important, like your dad used to say, a confirmation of, oh my gosh, you know, that's what I see inside too.
So we can connect the dots in the Bible, which is fine. But if it's a living Bible, it's got to connect the dots right on into me. Then it comes alive in me. And that's how we walk our lives with this connection to our Creator. Not because we're connecting the dots on paper, which is nice, and it's fun. Bible study, like right now, my wife and I, and we don't sit and read the Bible together. She reads over here next to the fireplace. I may be in the other room. It's a private, personal journey. It really is. I mean, it's a private thing that you do because you're attempting to understand your relationship with your Creator, your Savior, yourself. And I enjoy, you know, when she used to read me the Bible every now and then. She'd read you got to hear this. I got to read this for you. She'd read it for me and I'd go, that's cool. Something special when I read it to myself because I get to stop, read it again, look at it, maybe go, how does that reflect to this over here? Hold on, let me go back 2 pages. Oh, there it is. It's like a special journey when you're reading the Bible. You feel enriched.
Everybody's journey is different, and that's why when we read the Bible, it touches our heart because of our personal life. So what you read, when we read the same things, they affect us differently because of the different life experiences that we've had. And that one part brought tears to your eyes. That was meant for you.
Depends upon where we're at in our journey. I may not be at the same place anybody else is here, so that Bible verse would mean so much more to me than maybe where others are at. Yeah, it's where you're at. You're exactly right, where you're at in your journey.
I was watching this TV show about Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were going in the Dead Sea to see if it was actually down there. And the main guy, the scientist, he made a statement about the Bible that, you know, the history that's written in the Bible, none of it has any evidence. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy is flat out lying, because there's a lot of archaeological evidence that proves the Bible actually has history. I mean, a little bit of research will find that. And then I thought, well, what are they doing? Like she was talking about sexuality and the kids. What are they doing in public schools? They're creating a fairy tale of evolution, which is a theory, and they're minusing the actual evidence for creation. So what does that do? The only thing I had as a child was a little bit of remembrance and faith that maybe the Bible's true, maybe not just the Bible, but there is a God. But they created a doubt in my head, and I became a drug addict right after that, because that was the only thread of hope that I had, because I didn't have a father in the home, like a lot of people. It's not good, but that is a sinister plot that the teachers aren't aware. They're being used, and that is a horrendous thing to do to kids.
That's why I think this whole organization, when we talk about the foundation of understanding, but more importantly, human understanding, because it is a special kind of understanding. If you did foundation of poodle understanding, poodles are really smart. Human beings are very complex. The human experience is 100,000 times more complex than that of a poodle or a parrot or any kind of animal. So this foundation of human understanding that my father started when he was in his 30s is, to me, it's miraculous that a young man could say, you know what, I could be a diamond cutter and make a lot of money, or I can maybe try and help the world to understand this human experience and this journey. And I so much respect my father for making the choice to not be a diamond cutter and live the rich life, because he came from, his mother's side of the family was the Monnikendam family, and they are out of Europe, and they're a diamond cutting family. They're diamond cutters and jewelers. My father's father, I noticed on my dad's birth certificate, it said occupation of the father, and it said jeweler. And now through one of my brothers did a 23andMe, and then they got reached out to by one of the family members from my grandfather's brother. My father came from a family of, I think there was 10 or 11 children. So he has, yes, my grandfather, I keep saying that wrong. But he has all these uncles and aunts all around the world, in Australia and South Africa and New Zealand and Jerusalem, in Israel. But I realize that all of us, we want to get rich. We want to be rich. That's the pursuit of happiness, isn't it? But my dad looked at the pursuit of happiness and he said, well, I would rather pursue joy. And I will have joy if I can help the world to be a better place. And because true happiness is born from joy, from doing the right thing.
Your dad obviously had a calling, and he listened to it. But I wanted to say something about what Fabian said. In 7th grade, I was in the classroom, and they were teaching evolution. I didn't know much about anything, but I raised my hand, and I'm like, what about Adam and Eve? And it was silence. The teacher just looked at me, and I was like, what? What about Adam and Eve? So I walked out of that class going, that was so weird. Why did they act like that? But what you said was you had a sliver of hope, and they took that away. And I got to tell you, you take God out of the equation of life, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. And it's just so true. And that's what we're doing, is just making it seem like God is a fairy tale. And then that just leaves everybody like, well, what? There's no meaning.
What's interesting is you just said it. I don't want to read the Bible like it's full of fairy tales, because that's what I've been taught as un-American, to the theater and the movies and the fairy tales, and everything is a fairy tale life. And don't we want a fairy tale life to, grow up and marry a beautiful or handsome spouse and have a couple of kids and live the happy life, happy ever after, if you know what I'm saying? It's all a big fairy tale. I know that this whole thing of God and good and evil is real. I don't want to read fairy tales. I want to look at things and say, okay, these are stories that will help me not to make the same mistakes that others before me have made, that have led to horrible things. And I know that these things aren't fairy tales. I know, and I take this Bible far more serious than the little alien on board wants me to. All my life, I've always thought, I'm not going to read that Bible till I can really understand it. because I don't want to make the mistake to turn it into fairy tales. And you know what, sadly? I watched a lot of movies and TV shows that would take the Bible's stories and make them a little more fairy tale-like. It's like when I learned that Moses stuttered, and that's why Aaron did a lot of talking for him. Do you guys know all this? I thought to myself, well, Moses didn't stutter in the Ten Commandments. You know, in the movie The Ten Commandments, he didn't stutter. He was handsome, and he was well-spoken. You know what I'm saying? Because it's been glorified in a more movie kind of way with all of the glitz and glamour. And the reality is that this kerfuffle of a life that we all live is reality. And Moses stuttered. If you met this stuttering guy and he says, my name's Moses, you'd go, yeah, right. God's not going to pick you, you stuttering fool. No, God picked all these imperfect people to do these jobs, which is us. None of us are going to be perfect. None of us. And if we could see what Jesus looks like, don't they make Jesus look to be this handsome, really handsome, strong man? Well, what if you found out Jesus wasn't really that handsome? Maybe he had, a big nose for the Jew, if you know what I'm saying. Well, you're not a handsome guy, because we can't get past, again, our eyes, our judging eyes.
None of that matters.
It doesn't matter.
It's all about the principles. The Ten Commandments, I got to tell you, I watched that when I was a kid while my parents had a card party and they were smoking cigarettes like they did way back then. And I sat with, I think, my sister in a little bedroom and watched the Ten Commandments. I was so inspired. That was my favorite movie, one of my favorites as a kid, because even though it may not have been perfect, it showed the power of God. And I remember thinking, where is that today? Where is the power of God that can split open the sea, But I always wondered about that. But these movies still they'd have benefit to them.
Absolutely they do. But everything has been glorified and turned into Hollywoodized, to where everybody's beautiful and everything is wonderful. And even the scenes where they were suffering, you could watch the suffering and it just didn't seem that bad, because otherwise you'd be compelled to be outraged maybe. But like who was it? It was Moses' real mother, whose tie for her clothing got caught under the huge rock. And they were just going to smush her in there. Think about that. They were just going to push that gigantic rock right over the top of her, smush her bones right in there, and she'd become the glue that held everything together. But Moses stopped that, and he ended up saving his own mother. But Hollywood has a way of making all these things so glorified and so beautiful that we forget the reality is that you look around the room or you look around your life and you don't see all these beautiful people. But every now and then when you do see a beautiful person, why is it we give them more status? Why is it? Because of the way we've been conditioned and brought up. But Moses was a stutterer. And you think to yourself, if you really think about that, really? Well, that's why God gave him his brother to help speak for him, because he had a hard time getting his words out. He used imperfect people. He used us, all of us, with all of our flaws.
Yes, thank God. I was just going to make a point about Hollywood and movies and God. And in most movies, the person that's made out to look like the Fruit Loop is the more religious one and the one that's more understanding, but they make that person out to look crazy. So most of the movies out there have the godly, religious, more spiritual person look like a nutcake.
It's like we were talking last week when I was in Boston. I was a little kid and somebody said, "That's wicked, man." And there was a Boston lady in here and she says, "Yeah, that's definitely a word from Boston, wicked." Because bad is good and good is bad. Bad is cool. Wicked is good. And it's been going on. Yeah, that's sick, man. If you look at all the words, and I have friends forever, they'll use the F word every other word. I'm like, stop it. Why do you take this word that is a filthy, foul word, and it's every other word, and you use it to elevate whatever you're saying? You're using it as a way of somehow, if you can, that effing thing and this effing thing, and why are you using that in such a positive or an exclamation point kind of way, just adding flavor, I guess you might say, with a nasty word. It's like the black people call each other the N-word. Now, they hate it if a white person calls them that, but they can call each other that in a endearing way. It's a very strange, crazy world. But if you allow yourself in those shades of gray to play, you in your life will create your own shades of gray. We all create our own shades of gray, the acceptable wrongs. Maybe that's the best way to call it. These shades of gray are the acceptable wrongs because they aren't that evil. They aren't that dark. They aren't that bad. Oh, yes, they are. They're all part of the downfall of you. I was thinking the other day as I'm trying to climb this Mount Mischievous, me. Isn't there a Mount Vesuvius or something? Yeah, right? I mean, all my life, I've been building this mountain under myself. We all create this little mountain of things that we have to have, all the plaques on the wall that show you've got this education, or, for me, it was always like cars and cool things, and some people would be houses or clothing or whatever your mountain of stuff that you stand on top of and pound your chest and say, look at me. For me, it's Mount Mischievous because I've always kind of want to know what it's like to get burned, but just a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like I want to put my hand in the fire just to, oh, God, no, can't burn. And so the fingertips are burned. Yes, curiosity killed the cat. But anymore, through maturity, through wisdom and understanding and patience with myself, I'm learning I don't have to do any of that stuff. And it's funny because, all my cool stuff is kind of like not cool to me anymore. It's like just stuff. And I got so much of it, it's like I don't even know what to do with it. I'm just giving it away. And I remember when I was a young guy and somebody would give me some cool thing, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool, thank you. I can add it to my pile of stuff. And it's like now I have the biggest pile of stuff you've ever seen. But I don't want to give it all away at once, just a little bit at a time. Because it's like I don't want to fall off the top of the mountain. So slowly but surely I'm just kind of giving it away. And I'm like so thankful that it's going away. So thankful because it owned me.
You were mentioning about how we see other people. And if we stick with that, I've noticed if I see something wrong with some people without, and I just take note and don't take excessive note about it, I notice my vision of how I see things is a lot clearer because it's mind clutter when you have that.
I talked to your dad, I remember saying once, there's not big sins and little sins. Once you cross the line, you cross the line, And so there's no shades of gray in sin. It's either you did or you didn't. But everybody's trying to say there are. It's just...
A friend of mine told me something that I thought was very interesting. A sin is anything that separates you from your Father in heaven. And I had a whole new outlook on sin. I realized because we do live in shades of gray. I was talking about how, it's not that bad, so I can do it. That's the shades of gray we live in. But a sin, like Roger said, there is no difference between a big sin and a little sin. It's just how we perceive it in our mind. We kind of give ourselves permission to do these little sins, these little light gray sins. And that's why I started talking about the 50 Shades of Gray. The reality is, gray is a lie. Gray is a big fat lie. A sin is a sin is a sin is a sin. And we also have to take a look at sin and realize that we are not evil for sinning. If we choose to sin, that is an evil thing. And if we continue to sin and to sin and to sin and to sin, you will end up becoming an evil person. But the sin itself is a mistake. The sin itself is a bad choice. Once you've done it, you can have a moment of reflection and say, you know what, that was a bad choice. Let me take another opportunity to do this right. But if we judge ourselves, see, even using that word sin, people judge themselves. Oh, see, I'll never make it to heaven. But if we realize that we're all going to sin, we're all sinners, we're all going to make mistakes. But the idea is to try your best each day to return back to your center, to your conscious state, in which your Father in heaven will help you to be on that straight and narrow path. Narrow is the path and few that will find it. But you want to be on that narrow path, that straight and narrow path through that gyroscopic spiritual nature. And as you start to come off of that path, this magical force will pull you back to the middle. And that's where I find myself lately, and I'm very thankful to my Father in heaven.
Sin is basically disobedience. And every time you're being disobedient to the Father who has put the conscience in you, and every time you make that choice to be disobedient, you've actually become obedient to something else. And every time you're obedient to the darkness, it owns a little bit more. And then you can't. It owns you. It enslaves you. And that's what it looks like.
Shades of gray.
That's all the shades of gray. That's right. And they are getting darker. You know, my dad, in the latter part of his life, said something to me. It struck me like a lightning bolt to the heart. He said to me, you know, when you were younger, when you were a naughty boy. And I went, well, naughty boy would be 3, 4, 5 years old. And I thought, you mean like when I was a little kid? He goes, no, when you were in your 20s and 30s. And I was like, what do you mean a naughty boy? Naughty boy. And I thought to myself, he was being so loving saying that to me in that way. Because to me, that's, I think, how God looks at us when we do these 50 Shades of Gray sins. He's like, naughty, naughty, naughty. You just are not going the right direction. You're not making the right choices. So he doesn't want to, hit us with a cat of nine tails every time we do these stupid things. He just looks at it and says, you're being a naughty boy. And so I've learned in my life now, I actually kind of shake my finger at myself, like my dad would shake his finger at me and say, you're being a naughty boy. And I do that because I think to myself, I am that little boy. And I don't want to be a naughty boy. I don't want to be a naughty boy. I don't want to sin. I don't want to get angry. I don't want to get hateful, judgmental. I don't want to be lustful. I don't want to be gluttonous. I don't want to be jealous. I don't want to be any of these things. Those are all naughty things, right? Those are all naughty things. I don't want to be a naughty boy. I want to be a noble man. So until I can be a noble man, of which I'm becoming, then I'll continue to live that naughty life. I don't want to live that naughty boy life anymore. Do you guys? Do you gals? No. Learn how to be a noble person. And that's what I'm trying to do through this foundation of human understanding my human self more so I can be my higher nature self. And I can leave this human body, this human world behind and be that higher nature person on the other side.
I have a friend that's Jewish, and but he likes bacon.
Wait a minute. Who doesn't like bacon?
Even the Muslims.
Well, so for him, it's a sin when he eats bacon. I'm not Jewish. I don't have any problem with eating bacon, so it's not a sin for me. But why is it a sin for him? Well, the reason, I think, is it's a compromise in character. That's why you don't eat the Rocky Road ice cream.
I also have coffee swirl fudge.
You're hopeless.
I have a question. I was wondering, what do you guys think? To me, it seems like if you are in the objective state, like not necessarily sitting down and doing this, I like to call it silent prayer, but if you're in that objective state, I don't think it's possible to sin. But we're not always in that, but I don't think you can.
Well, I think that if you are in the groove, you might say, of that consciousness, you would have to get out of the groove to sin. When you do sin, when you're on your journey and you do this naughty thing, whatever it is, you are not obviously in your conscious state at that moment. You have given it up. You have given up to another.
I would agree with that. The state of mind or your conscious state is actually what keeps you from sin. And the unconscious state makes you subject to sin.
I know from remembering how I was a child, it's the natural state to live in, actually. When you're a child, that's a natural state. You're not worrying, you're not thinking, you just are, and there's not conflict there.
So as I lived many, many, many decades of my life in that naughty boy state, I guess I maybe should have called this talk the naughty boy. I can, but I won't. Because I think that's just, to me, if you look at yourself, people that are listening out in this world, not as evil, rotten sinner as naughty boy or naughty girl when you make these little mistakes, when you get angry. The funny one is that you see yourself getting angry, and you get angry, and then you say something you regret, and then you judge yourself, and then you hate yourself, and then you hate your situation, and it continues to escalate, all because you couldn't just say, oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I was a naughty boy, and kind of laugh at it like that, because it's almost, imagine calling yourself as full-grown men and full-grown women a naughty boy or a naughty girl. It's like the father within, almost. It's almost like you can reprimand yourself, which we don't know how to do. We wait for somebody else to reprimand us. But if you just look at yourself and say, well, that was dumb. I shouldn't have eaten 5 scoops of that Rocky Road. 1 would have been plenty.
Your conscience will reprimand you. And at first it seems like it's a lot of fun. You know, like I got started smoking marijuana, my friend's about 13 years old. And the first year was fun. And after that, all of a sudden I started becoming very self-conscious when I did it. Also paranoid, because you always think people are laughing at you behind your back. So it's actually a spirit behind it. And it will torture you if you have a conscience. If you don't, but my conscience kept me from continuing it. I quit when I was 15. And people would ask me, I said, why don't you want to smoke? And I said, I just don't like it. I'm not compatible with it. And that was the whole thing. I wasn't compatible.
Well, your conscience, you knew it was wrong.
The problem is you can't put your conscience out. If you continue to do things that are wrong, like we said earlier, you move to that darker area, and more, it has control over you. Yeah. And it never can put it completely out. There's a piece of God, so to speak, inside of you that never goes away. And you always have a chance to come back. That's the good part about it. That's the saving grace, no matter how far you've fallen. But you can drown it out for a long time.
Yeah, and I personally, I observed I was going the wrong path, and I was trying to hide from life. I felt a terror that conscience was going to leave me. I sensed it. It didn't say it in words, but like it was going to depart. And that was the most scary thing in my whole life, because then I would have had no standard, and that's what woke me up to finally change.
So we've been talking about the 50 Shades of Grey that are all the little tiny transgressions, the tiny little transgressions that we do, that we make excuses for, that it's not that bad. And slowly but surely they mount up and mount up and mount up. And they are the little grains of sand. A few weeks back I did a show called It's the Little Things. These are the little things in life, the 50 Shades of Grey that you make excuses for, whether it be the Rocky Road ice cream. My brother David said the reason why he got diabetes is because he loved eating ice cream every night. And every night he'd eat ice cream and ice cream and ice cream. And then one day he went to the doctor and they said, you got diabetes. And he says, I blamed it on my ice cream consumption. It's just the little things we do that are like acceptable. You know, maybe it wasn't the ice cream, but it was the ice cream just was the final straw, I guess you might say. So he gave that up. He changed his way of eating, and he's got his diabetes under control. But it takes discipline. The problem is we have the discipline when we're young, but we slowly but surely give it away, a grain of sand at a time in the hourglass. And then one day we wake up and we're full of illness and disease, and we wonder, what happened? What happened was the 50 Shades of Grey. All the little transgressions, all the little things that are acceptable sins, all the little naughty boy and naughty girl things we do. Narrow is the path, few that shall find it. One last thing I want to say, that as we go down this road of life, we're going to see a lot of suffering. All around us, we're going to see people dying, which we see. A friend of mine called today and said, you know that person I told you about a couple days ago? He died this morning. And I said, yeah, people are going to die, and I think that death rate is going to escalate as we move into these years ahead of us. It's those who choose to continue walking in the sleepwalk of life, in the hypnotic state that they're in. But narrow is the path and few that will find it. But along that path, if you find it, there's going to be people dying and suffering. Don't think it's a fairy tale. It's not. When you go to Mount Kilimanjaro, there's dead bodies along the way. Everybody you read every story you read. They go to the top of the mountain and the oxygen is thin, and then the winter comes and they can't get the bodies off the top of the mountain, and there's dead bodies. The path is narrow and few that shall find it. But let me warn you that there's going to be death and destruction along that path. It's not a fairy tale path. It's going to be tough. And the tough got to get up and get going and not be a naughty boy. So thanks all for coming, and thanks for listening, and thanks for your contributions to the foundation. We'll see you next week.